Good morning, everybody. We are back in the garage and we are going to start taking on our fire skid water pump trailer build. So I've got the parts kind of laid out and we'll go through kind of what parts we're going to have, what parts we need, and how this build is gonna go. So I'll start setting up some of this stuff and we'll get going on this build. So the first thing we're gonna do is let's talk about the theory that we have. So here I've got my water tank, and what I want to be able to do is I want to throw this in the back of a pickup or on a trailer and be able to transport water wherever I'm going to end up needing it. Here I've got a 2-inch gas-powered water pump because the thought behind it is I want to be able to drive out to wherever either a fire starts, or if I'm going to burn some of these brush piles outside, I want to be able to have water right there. Well, I'm not going to be able to have a way to pump water, and I can't just rely on gravity. So I bought this pump, and that's going to allow me to move massive amounts of water to get the fire out or whatever I end up needing. But to make this work, I need to plumb this tank into this pump. Now all the fittings on here are 2-inch. They're pretty universal. They're all always about the same. So to do that, we're gonna have to kind of have a bit of a thought. Now, if this is sitting in the pickup, I want to be able to have this pump close by so everything's readily available. So I think the first thing we're going to need to do is I want to hook up a supply line that goes from the tank to the pump. So to do that, we're going to have a T and a barb fitting that I'll put some of this suction line on, like this. And then I'm going to have this quick coupler, so that'll go on right into the bottom of our tank, and we can cam lock that in just like those garden hose fittings we learned about last week, and that'll be on. I'll have a valve here at the bottom of the tank. This will hook in here. There's our inlet line to the pump. So let's go ahead and build that. So here we're going to wrap up this inlet fitting on our pump, and we're just going to use a little Teflon tape. Now you always want to wrap Teflon tape in the direction that you're turning the fitting. So since we're screwing it into the right, we're going to wrap it so that way the trailing edge goes to the right. That way you're not unwinding the Teflon tape. And I like to wrap it kind of towards the beginning edge, because as you put the fitting on, that tape is going to work its way into the threads. So you really only need to have it in the first part of the threads, because as it pushes in, it's going to seal up. So let's get that threaded on. Now with pipe fittings, it's an interference fit. So what that means is the threads, as you screw it in, it's going to get tighter because the threads are tapered and they're always a little bit off, which is good because if it starts leaking, you can sometimes fix the leak just by cranking it a little tighter. But in this situation, we got to be a little bit mindful because we need this T to face the tank. So we're going to try to get it as close as we can. So we're going to run it up tight like that. And now I'm going to show you guys one of the coolest tools ever made, in my opinion. So these are snap-on, I think they call them a pipe wrench, but they're actually made by Baco, but Snap-on sells them and they are awesome. Instead of a pipe wrench, it almost acts like a plier. So you can squeeze it, and as long as you're pushing on this end, it just grabs tighter and tighter and tighter. And I really like them, especially on these plastic fittings, because you can set the squeeze too, so you won't crack one of these really expensive plastic fittings. All right, just like that. That should work. That's tight. Now we're gonna do the same thing with this fitting, because I gotta have a little bit of an idea of how long of this suction line I'm gonna end up needing. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna spin this fitting onto the T, and I'm gonna measure it so I can figure out roughly how much of this suction line I need. And this is gonna be important because that suction line will give us a little bit of flex, a little bit of wiggle. I don't really want anything to be super, super tight because I'm not sure how much vibration this pump is gonna have, and vibration equals bad things. So this suction hose being flexible will kind of help dampen some of that vibration. We'll take our fancy little tape measure here, and oh, better put this fitting on too. So I'm going to need about 8 inches of suction line to hook this together. I could probably get away with shorter, but this 2-inch suction line is rigid, so it's going to be hard enough to fight it as it is. So let's go over here. But we'll keep that handy because we'll probably have to. I have found that whenever you're trying to get these parts and pieces to go together, that glass cleaner works really good as a little bit of a lubricant to get these fittings in. Alright, that's about all the tighter I want to get those, I think. I'm kind of getting nervous as it is. These fittings are like 20 bucks a piece, so I want to be a little careful when I'm, hammering them together. But we got that on, so the next thing I'm going to do is put a band clamp on here, and that'll just kind of help it for if you're going to run like super high pressure. It's nice to have those clamps. Not super crucial in these. I mean, they don't spin, they're not going anywhere, but it'll make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Now we're not gonna tighten the band clamps on yet. I just want the band clamps on here because I'm gonna orient them so they're easy to check as I'm looking at this pump. So that way when it's in the pickup and we're in the heat of things, I want to be able, if one does start leaking, I want to be able to fix it quickly and easily. So I'm going to wait till I get this threaded in, and then we'll orient and tighten up them band clamps. A lot of people tighten the ever-living shit out of these fittings, and it's not necessary. You don't need to. Just run it up till it's tight, and then snug it up just a little bit more. I mean, that's the beautiful thing with that interference fit. It'll never interfere more. So you don't have to just crank it ridiculously tight. And it's usually better that you don't, just because if you do have to take anything apart, you don't want to fight it. Okay, well, we got these in, so I'm gonna snug that up. Snug that up. All right. So here we go. Our banjo goes in. Now we've got inlet to our pump. So now let's work on the outlet side. So I want to be able to have two lines. I want to be able to use those hoses to fight a fire. And to do that, I needed to choke down from 2-inch down to garden hose fitting. Now, if you have any type of mechanical knowledge or have been exposed to any of this, you'll know that 2 inches of coming in through a 158 gallon a minute pump, going down to a 3/4 inch line, that is going to make some serious pressure. Because all a pump does is make flow. You get pressure by restriction. So I'm scared that going from 2-inch in to 3/4 out, we're going to build excessive pressure. So what I want to be able to do is I want to have a line that bleeds back and goes back to tank, so that way it'll act as a recirculator, but it'll also help protect my pump from overworking itself. So to do that, we're going to put a T in here, and we're going to have a line that goes back to tank, but I'm going to have a valve in here, and then we'll have our main hose fight line. So let's go ahead and get that installed. You might be asking why I went and got all these adapters to step it down, because they make a bushing that would go right from 2-inch right to what I need. But my thought behind that was I wanted this to be able to be used for many different things. And I don't always know what kind of plumbing is going to be available to me. So I figured by having as many steps as I could get, that would allow me to change this up, because any fitting that I might come across down the road, or if something starts leaking and I need a repair part, that gives me the most options that somebody's got what I need to fix it. So that was another reason why I wanted to have as many steps, because down the road I might need something different. Perfect, just like that. I might need something different, so I want to be able to have as many options as I can have. So the next part we're going to install is a 1/4 turn ball valve. Now this is going to go right here, and this is going to select whether we're closed, so it'll be only coming out our fight line, or if we're going to be open and dumping back into tank. So that's going to let us, and this is going to be our one that we're going to be able to kind of crack to allow water to go back to tank and sort of regulate our pressure and flow right here. Because we're only going to be able to get so much pressure out of this line. So what I want to do is when we're out there on the line, I'll hit the valve, we'll be spraying, and I'll know how much pressure I got. And what I'll do is I'll have somebody open this until I just see a pressure drop in our hose. And that'll let me know that we're not overworking our pump. So to get this attached, we're going to have female to female. So to do that, we're going to use one of these short pipes. We're going to have that threaded in there, this threaded in here, and we're going to go to a barbed fitting here, because I'm going to have another chunk of this hose going into the tank. So let's go ahead and get all these components installed. So when it comes to orientating this valve, I'm envisioning the end of the tailgate being right here. So I want to be able to reach it very accessibly from this general area. You know, I want it to be able to fast to get to. I want to be able to see where it's at. So you just got to rotate it a little bit more. There we go. And I'm gonna have it canted just a little bit because this is the prime port for the pump. So I want to be able to get to this easy so I can dump water down there and prime the system. And I don't want this valve to get in the way. All right. I'm gonna hold off on this because I want to know roughly how much hose I'm gonna need, because we need to give this water somewhere to go. And to get back into that tank, we're gonna use a 2-inch bulk fitting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut a hole and have this fitting going right through the side. And that'll give me a nice sweep to go from here back into the tank. So I need to measure this so I can cut a hole, and then it's gonna be a little bit of a fitting dance because this hose is not super flexible. So to cover my butt, first step we're going to do when it comes to installing this bulkhead is we need to draw where it's going to go. So where we're going to put it is there's a center line on these totes, and I want it to be on one side of that center line. So in this instance, it's going to make the most sense to have it right about here. We're going to draw our inner circle here. We're going to cut that out. We'll get to installing this bulkhead. That's work. You have a rubber seal, a plastic seal ring, and then you have this forcing nut. This is left-hand thread. And when you put these together, so our tank will be sitting right here. And as you put these together, it'll squeeze and seal up tight. And that way we can put stuff in, we can put that fitting in here, and it'll be a perfect leak-proof seal. Here's where it's gonna get tricky, because I gotta be able to reach this. And then you gotta remember, left-hand thread. than it should have been. So keep in mind, if you're going to build one of these at home, make sure you can reach that a little easier than I could. There we go. One thing that I really wanted to make sure of was that the tanks have the same fittings. So there's a male fitting down there. So I wanted to put a male fitting up here. That way, you know that it takes female fittings to the pump. And that way, I wasn't worried about hooking it up wrong, but I want to be able to use these hoses other places if I need to. Cut this guy in such a way that the bend doesn't fight us too bad, but I can still get it hooked up. So I'm gonna go right there. That should give us plenty of room. I don't know if this is a summer hit of the 90s, but it's a good tune. Okay, so now we've got our recirc line. That'll be on this valve. But wait! This port is open! So we need to do something there. Now, if you've been paying really close attention, don't get ahead of me, because you might even know what's coming next. So I wanted to set it up with a T fitting down here, because the way this pump is set up, I should be able to pull a draft. Now what that means is, I can take another one of these suction lines, hook it to this lower fitting, and drop a hose into a water source. Whether that be a pond, a pool, a ditch, anywhere, a stock tank. If I have that line hooked in, shut this lower valve, close my fight line, and open this line, the pump should be able to pull a draft, and I can use an external water source to fill my tank. But when we're not pulling a draft, I'll need a way to block that off. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this fitting go on here, and I'm kind of going back and forth on whether or not I'll have this 90-degree fitting on there or not. I don't think it's super crucial. My thought was if this was sitting in the back of a pickup, we could have the hose kind of come off the back. But so we're gonna go just like that, and then all I need is to have a cap on here. And what that's gonna allow for is that's gonna let me have this plug, and if I get to a spot where I'm either fighting a fire close to a water source or have a water source available, I can pull this, hook up my draft line, drop that in the water source, and we'll be able to pull the draft and fill the tank, or just use the draft to fight the fire. And there we have it, folks. This is a pretty good glimpse at what my little homestead fire rig looks like. Next step will be to put some water in the tank and then give it a shot. Make sure everything works.